Crystal chandeliers cast diamonds of light across the palace grand hall. 400 guests in their finest evening were mingled beneath vaulted ceilings that had witnessed 3 generations of Greystone rule. The annual charity gala was the social event of the Montana werewolf calendar. Senators alphas from neighboring territories, council members, wealthy pack families, all gathered under one roof, their champagne glasses catching the light like stars. I moved through them like a shadow, invisible. That was the trick and I'd learned over 12 years. Keep your eyes down. Keep your steps silent. Become part of the furniture, part of the walls, part of nothing at all. My name is Alara Winterborn, and I am a servant in the palace where my parents once walked as honored guests. The silver tray in my hands held 6 crystal flutes of champagne, $12,000 per bottle. I knew because Margot, the head housekeeper, had reminded us 3 times before the gala began. 1 drop spilled, she'd said, and it would come out of our wages for the next month. I navigated around a cluster of senators discussing territory disputes. My uniform was simple: black dress, white apron, sensible shoes. Nothing that would draw attention. The fabric was cheap but clean. I'd scrubbed it myself that morning in the basement laundry room where I'd lived for the past 12 years. The Montana Rockies pressed against the western windows. Even through the thick glass, I could sense them. Mountains that had once called to the wolf I no longer heard. 12 years of silence. 12 years since I'd felt her stir. I moved toward the refreshment table to collect more glasses. That's when I saw her. Vivian Blackwood stood near the marble fountain, her crimson gown cut to perfection, her dark hair swept into an elegant twist. 28 years old and beautiful in the way poisonous things often are. Bright, alluring, deadly. She was laughing with a group of council wives, but her eyes tracked me across the room. I felt the weight of her gaze like ice down my spine. 12 years had taught me to recognize that look. It meant pain was coming. The only question was when. I tried to alter my course to move toward the kitchen instead. But Margot caught my eye from across the hall, gesturing sharply toward the western terrace. Lord Garrett and his companions needed refreshments. I had no choice. The path took me directly past Vivian. I kept my eyes down, kept my breathing steady. 3 more steps, 2 more steps, almost past her. "Oh my goodness," Vivian's voice rang out sharp and theatrical. I felt her hand on my arm, felt the deliberate push, felt my balance shift. The tray tilted. Time seemed to slow as 6 crystal flutes slid toward the edge. $12,000 per bottle. 6 bottles. $72,000 of champagne cascading through the air in a golden arc. It splashed across the white silk gown of Senator Morrison's wife. The woman gasped, stumbling backward. Champagne dripped from her diamond necklace, soaked into the imported fabric pooled on the polished marble floor. The music stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. 400 pairs of eyes turned toward us. "I am so sorry." Vivian's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with manufactured shock. "I didn't see her there. These servants, they move so quietly." "Are you all right, Patricia?" Senator Morrison's wife stood frozen, her expression a mixture of horror and rage. The dress was ruined. Everyone could see that. The white silk had gone transparent where the champagne soaked through. The crystal beading hung limp and dripping. I stood with the empty tray, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't an accident. Vivian had positioned herself perfectly, had waited until I passed, had pushed with just enough force to make it look unintentional. "You clumsy fool!" Senator Morrison stepped forward, his face purple with anger. "Do you have any idea what that dress cost? $20,000? I opened my mouth, but no words came. What could I say that Vivian had pushed me? Who would believe a servant over the chancellor's daughter, over the woman the entire kingdom expected to become their queen? "I'm so sorry, Senator Morrison." I kept my voice steady even as my hands trembled. "I'll pay for the damages. I'll work extra shifts, whatever it takes." "Extra shifts." The senator laughed, a cruel bark of sound. "That dress was custom made in Paris, and the champagne you just wasted was a 1947 vintage. Do you have any idea what you've destroyed?" I did the math in my head: the dress, the champagne, the humiliation of a senator's wife at the most important social event of the year. $50,000, maybe more. At $15 per day, it would take me 9 years to repay. "Security," took dictum. Senator Morrison's voice boomed through the silent hall. "Remove this incompetent servant. I want her arrested for destruction of property and public disruption. Let her spend the next 5 years in prison thinking about her carelessness." 2 guards in crisp uniforms started toward me. I saw their faces. They'd been in the palace as long as I had. They knew me, knew I wasn't careless. But orders were orders, and senators outranked servants. I prepared to go quietly. Resistance would only make it worse. I'd learned that lesson many times over the years. That won't be necessary. The voice cut through the hall like a blade through silk, deep, commanding, absolutely cold. Everyone froze. The guards stopped mid-step. Senator Morrison's mouth hung open. Even Vivian's perfect composure cracked for just a moment. Alpha King Lysander Greystone moved through the crowd, and people parted before him like water before a ship's prow. He was 6 feet 5 inches of barely contained power. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from Montana granite. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw. A scar across his left shoulder, visible through his tailored black suit. But it was his eyes that held you. Steel gray like storm clouds over the Rockies. Eyes that had seen combat death loss. Eyes that showed no mercy to enemies. He'd been standing near the eastern windows when the incident occurred. I hadn't seen him there. Hadn't known he was watching. Lysander stopped 3 feet from me. This close I could feel the alpha power radiating from him like heat from a furnace. Every wolf in the room felt it. The primal urge to bow, to submit, to acknowledge the apex predator in their midst. Your Majesty, Senator Morrison bowed quickly. This servant has destroyed valuable property and humiliated my wife before the entire court. She must face consequences. Lysander didn't look at the senator. His eyes were fixed on me, steel gray and utterly unreadable. We stood like that for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. The entire hall held its breath. Then his eyes shifted, just for a heartbeat. The gray flickered to gold, his wolf rising to the surface. I saw something flash across his expression. Confusion, recognition, something I couldn't name. He turned to the guards. Release her. Your Majesty. One of the guards hesitated. Senator Morrison requested. I heard what Senator Morrison requested. Lysander's voice dropped to a register that made everyone in the hall take an involuntary step back. I'm telling you to release her. Now. The guards stepped away immediately. Senator Morrison's face went from purple to crimson. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this servant has caused significant damage and you will be compensated fully from the palace treasury. Lysander cut him off without raising his voice. Your wife's dress will be replaced. The champagne was palace stock, so no loss there. Is there anything else? The senator opened his mouth, closed it. The entire room could feel the warning in Lysander's tone. Push further and face consequences no senator wanted to contemplate. No, Your Majesty, thank you for your generosity. Lysander's gaze swept the room. The gala will continue. Musicians, please resume. The string quartet started playing again, though their hands trembled slightly. Conversations restarted in hushed tones, but everyone was watching us from the corners of their eyes. The Alpha King had never intervened in servant matters before. Never. This was unprecedented. Lysander looked down at me. Up close, I could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, could see the tight control in the set of his jaw, could smell him, cedar and leather, and something rolled that made the silent wolf deep inside me whimper. Follow me. He walked toward the eastern quarter without checking to see if I obeyed. I followed because not following would have been worse. I could feel Vivian's eyes burning into my back, could feel the weight of 400 stairs. The empty tray shook in my hands. Lysander led me through 3 corridors and up 2 flights of stairs. Away from the gala, away from the crowd, away from anyone who might overhear whatever was about to happen. He stopped at a door I'd never been through before. The private wing, where family and honored guests stayed, where servants like me were never ever allowed. The door opened into a sitting room that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Rockies. Furniture that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Books lining mahogany shelves. A fireplace with a mantel carved from a single piece of timber. Lysander gestured to a chair upholstered in deep blue velvet. Sit. I stayed standing. Servants didn't sit in rooms like this. Servants didn't even enter rooms like this. I said sit. The alpha command threaded through his voice. Not a request. An order that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the wolf instinct buried deep inside me. My legs folded before I could stop them. I sank into the chair. The velvet was soft beyond imagining. Lysander moved to a cabinet and poured something amber into 2 crystal glasses. He brought one to me. Drink. I stared at the glass. Whiskey. Expensive whiskey, judging by the color. Your Majesty, I shouldn't. You're shaking. He pressed the glass into my hand. His fingers brushed mine. The contact sent a jolt up my arm, like touching a live wire. I jerked back. The whiskey sloshed but didn't spill. Lysander's eyes narrowed. He'd felt it too. I could see it in the way his hand clenched briefly before he forced it to relax, in the way his jaw tightened, in the flash of gold that flickered through the gray again. "Drink," he said again, quieter this time. I took a sip. The whiskey burned going down smooth and rich and probably worth more than my yearly wages. The warmth spread through my chest, steadying the tremors I hadn't realized I couldn't control. Lysander stood by the window, his back to me. The moonlight through the glass turned his dark hair silver at the edges. "What's your name?" "Alara Winterborn, Your Majesty." "Winterborn." He said it slowly, like tasting something half-forgotten. "That name, I've heard it before." Of course he had. My father had been Alpha Thaddeus Winterborn, a member of his father's inner council. But that was before the rogue attack that killed both my parents, before the debt the council discovered, before everything changed. My parents served your father, Your Majesty, before they died. How did they die? Rogue attack, 12 years ago, Idaho border. He turned to face me. You were 14. Yes, Your Majesty. And you've been working in the palace as a servant since then. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes, Your Majesty. My father left debts. The council allowed me to work them off rather than face imprisonment. How much? $847,000, Your Majesty. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. That's a substantial debt for an alpha who served my father faithfully. Yes, Your Majesty. And your wages? $15 per day, Your Majesty. I watched him do the math. Watched the moment he realized the numbers didn't work. At $15 per day, even working every single day with no time off, no illness, no injury, it would take me 155 years to repay that debt. You've been here 12 years. That means you've paid approximately $65,000. Yes, Your Majesty, plus interest at 15% annually. His hands clenched at his sides. The debt grows faster than you can pay it. Yes, Your Majesty. Silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear the faint sounds of the gala continuing below. Music and laughter and the murmur of 400 voices pretending they hadn't just witnessed something unprecedented. Lysander crossed the room until he stood directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, close enough that his scent wrapped around me, cedar and leather and that wild, unnamed thing that made my pulse spike. "Give me your hand." I set down the whiskey glass and extended my hand. It was still trembling, slightly. He took it in both of his. His hands were large, calloused from weapons training. Warm. The contact sent that electric jolt through me again. Stronger this time. I watched his pupils dilate, watched the gold bleed into the gray of his eyes and stay there. He turned my hand palm up. The skin there was rough from 12 years of scrubbing floors, washing dishes, hauling water. The nails were broken and uneven. There was a scar across my thumb from where I'd cut myself on broken glass 6 months ago. "What happened tonight?" His voice was rough. "Vivian pushed you." It wasn't a question, but I couldn't confirm it. Couldn't accuse the Chancellor's daughter. Couldn't risk what would happen if I spoke that truth aloud. "I was careless, Your Majesty." "Don't lie to me, Alara. The use of my name shocked me more than anything else that had happened. Alpha Kings didn't use servants' first names, didn't speak to them directly unless giving orders, didn't hold their hands in private sitting rooms and stare at them like they were puzzles to solve. I saw what happened," he continued. "I was watching when she positioned herself in your path, when she waited until you were close, when she pushed." Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why were you watching me?" His jaw tightened. His hands on mine tightened. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "I don't know." He released my hand abruptly and stepped back. The loss of contact left me cold. He moved to the window again, putting distance between us. "Your scent." His voice was barely above a whisper. "What is it?" I didn't understand the question. "My scent, Your Majesty." "All wolves have a scent, a signature that identifies them. What's yours?" I'd never thought about it. Servants didn't have the luxury of noticing such things. "I don't know, Your Majesty." He turned to look at me. The gold in his eyes was brighter now, his wolf much closer to the surface. "Rain," he said. "You smell like rain and night-blooming jasmine, like spring storms over the Montana mountains." My breath caught. No one had ever described me that way. No one had ever noticed my scent at all. "How is That possible? He was talking more to himself than to me. How have you been here 12 years and I never noticed? He shook his head sharply as if clearing it. When he looked at me again, the gold had receded. The steel gray had returned. The Alpha King mask back in place. You'll move out of the servant quarters tonight. Margot will prepare a room in the East Wing. Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly. That's an order, not a request. The debt will be reviewed by independent auditors. If it's legitimate, we'll establish a reasonable repayment plan. If it's not, his voice went hard. If it's not, there will be consequences for whoever forged it. I stood my legs unsteady. Your Majesty, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? He didn't answer. Couldn't answer, perhaps, because the truth was written in the way his hands clenched at his sides, in the gold that kept trying to surface in his eyes, in the tension that radiated from every line of his body. Return to your quarters. Pack your belongings. Margot will come for you within the hour. He turned away, dismissing me. I walked to the door on shaking legs. My hand was on the handle when he spoke again. Alara. I turned back. He stood silhouetted against the window, the mountains dark behind him. Stay away from Vivian Blackwood. Whatever she wants, whatever game she's playing, stay away from her. Do you understand? Yes, Your Majesty. I fled, down the corridors, down the stairs, through the servants' passages I'd navigated for 12 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. My hand still tingled where he'd touched it. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. The basement servant quarters were exactly as I'd left them. A narrow cot, a single trunk for my belongings, a small mirror with cracked spider webbing through the glass. I'd lived here since I was 14 years old. 12 years in a room barely large enough to turn around in. I sat on the cot and pressed my hands to my face. They were still shaking. Everything was shaking. The world had shifted tonight in ways I didn't understand, couldn't understand. The Alpha King had defended me, had brought me to his private wing, had held my hand and told me I smelled like rain and jasmine, had ordered me moved to the East Wing, had promised to investigate the debt that had kept me enslaved for 12 years. Why I pulled out my small trunk and began folding my few possessions. 3 servant uniforms, 1 set of undergarments, a hairbrush with missing bristles, a photograph of my parents faded and creased from years of looking. My mother smiled up at me from the photo. Dr. Liana Winterbourne, the greatest healer Montana had ever known. Her gift had been legendary. She could cure fevers with a touch, mend broken bones in minutes, draw poison from blood before it could spread. She'd died using that gift. Died stopping a plague that would have killed 347 people. I was 16 when I watched her give everything to save others. My father stood beside her in the photo. Alpha Thaddeus Winterbourne. Strong, honorable, respected. He died the same night as my mother. The official report said rogue attack, a coordinated assault on the Idaho border. Both of them killed protecting the pack. I'd believed that story for 12 years. But looking at the photo now, feeling the phantom warmth of Lysander's hands on mine, smelling cedar and leather and wild things, I wondered. The debt had appeared so conveniently. $847,000. An impossible sum for an alpha who'd served faithfully for 20 years. Who benefited from my parents' deaths. Who benefited from having the daughter of a powerful alpha reduced to servitude. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Margot entered, her expression carefully neutral. She was 55 years old and had been head housekeeper for 30 years. She'd watched me arrive at 14, had given me my first servant uniform, had taught me how to become invisible. His Majesty has arranged a room for you in the East Wing, she said. I'll take you there now. I followed her through the servants' passages, but instead of going up, we went across. Through doors I'd never entered, down halls I'd only glimpsed. The East Wing was where honored guests stayed, where visiting alphas and their families were housed during diplomatic visits. Margot stopped at a door carved with intricate designs, oak leaves and wolves and mountains. She pushed it open. The room beyond was larger than the entire basement quarters. A 4-poster bed with curtains of deep green silk, windows overlooking the palace gardens, a writing desk, a wardrobe, a private bathroom with running water, and a clawfoot tub. This can't be right, I whispered. His Majesty was very specific. Margot set my trunk on the bed. You're to have everything you need. If you require anything, pull that cord. Someone will come. She moved toward the door, then hesitated. Alara, be careful. Whatever's happening here, whatever His Majesty's intentions, be careful. Then she was gone, and I was alone in a room worth more than I'd earned in 50 lifetimes. I walked to the window, Below the palace gardens spread out in geometric patterns, roses and lavender and night-blooming jasmine. I could smell them even through the closed window. Could smell the rain on the wind sweeping down from the mountains. Rain and jasmine. That's what he'd said. That's what I smelled like. My reflection stared back at me from the dark glass. 26 years old, but looking older. 12 years of servitude had left their mark. Shadows under my eyes, cheekbones too sharp. Hair that hadn't been properly cut in years, just hacked short with kitchen shears when it got too long. But my eyes were still my mother's eyes, green like Montana forests in summer, and buried deep, so deep I'd almost forgotten it existed, was my mother's gift. The healing gift that ran through the winter-born bloodline. I'd felt it stir tonight, when Lysander touched my hand, when his scent wrapped around me, when his eyes flashed gold and something ancient and primal recognized something in me. A knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find a servant I didn't recognize holding a large box. "From His Majesty," the servant said, setting the box on the writing desk. "He requests you attend breakfast in the Great Hall tomorrow morning at 8. The servant left before I could respond. I opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a dress, not a servant's uniform. A real dress in deep forest green silk. Simple but elegant. With it was a note in strong, angular handwriting. "You are no longer a servant in this palace. Tomorrow you begin a new role. We will discuss the details at breakfast. LG." I held the dress up to the lamplight. The silk was soft beyond imagining. The color almost exactly matched my eyes. It would fit perfectly. Somehow he'd known my measurements. I hung the dress in the wardrobe and collapsed onto the bed. The mattress was soft, the pillows were filled with down, the sheets smelled of lavender. Everything was perfect. Everything was impossible. Through the wall, faint and muffled, I heard voices. A man and a woman. The rooms in the east wing shared walls. I shouldn't listen, shouldn't care. But something made me press my ear to the wall anyway. "You're being ridiculous, Lysander." Vivienne's voice sharp with anger. "She's a servant, less than nothing." "She's not nothing." His voice cold and distant. "And you will not touch her again. Do you understand? Touch her." I barely brushed against her. The clumsy fool spilled champagne everywhere. "I saw what you did. Don't insult my intelligence by lying." A pause. Then Vivienne's voice softer, seductive. "Come to bed, darling. Let me help you forget about tonight's unpleasantness. We have the blood oath. We have our future together. Don't let some servant girl distract you from what matters." Silence. Long and heavy. I pressed my ear harder against the wall, my heart pounding. "Not tonight, Vivienne." "What?" I said, "Not tonight. I have work to finish." "Work? You're lying. You're thinking about her, aren't you? That pathetic little—" "Enough." The alpha command in his voice made even me flinch, and I was in the next room. "I'm tired. Please leave." "Leave. This is my room. And I'm asking you to use one of the other guest suites tonight. I need space to think." I heard footsteps. A door slamming. Then silence. I pulled away from the wall and lay back on the bed staring at the ceiling. The blood oath. Vivienne had mentioned a blood oath. I knew what that meant in werewolf culture. A binding made in childhood, a promise sealed in blood, a commitment that superseded even mate bonds in some pacts. Lysander and Vivienne had a blood oath. That explained why she walked through the palace like she already owned it, why everyone expected her to become queen, why she hated me with such visceral intensity. I was a threat to her future. A servant girl who somehow made the Alpha King's eyes flash gold, who somehow smelled like rain and jasmine and made his wolf rise to the surface. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. But every time I started to drift off, I felt phantom warmth on my hand where he'd touched me, smelled cedar and leather, heard his voice saying my name like it meant something. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows that faced east. For the first time in 12 years, I woke to natural light instead of the dim basement bulbs. For the first time in 12 years, I woke in a real bed instead of a narrow cot. For the first time in 12 years, I woke to the smell of jasmine from the gardens instead of mold and stone. I bathed in the clawfoot tub using soap that smelled of lavender and honey. I washed my hair with shampoo that left it soft instead of straw-like. I dried off with towels thicker than any blanket I'd owned. Then I put on the green dress. It fit like it had been made for me. The silk whispered against my skin. The neckline was modest but flattering. The hem fell to just below my knees. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. The girl staring back at me didn't look like a servant, didn't look broken or beaten or half-starved. She looked almost like someone my mother would have recognized, almost like the daughter of an alpha, almost like someone who belonged in a palace. At 7:55, I made my way to the Great Hall. The corridors were busy with morning's activity, servants carrying breakfast trays, guards changing shifts, council members heading to early meetings. Everyone stared as I passed. The transformation from invisible servant to visible guest was complete. The Great Hall was already full when I entered. Long tables filled with nobles eating breakfast, the smell of fresh bread and bacon and coffee, conversations that died as I walked in. Lysander sat at the head of the high table. He looked up when I entered. Our eyes met across the room. His went wide. His hand clenched on his coffee cup hard enough that I heard the porcelain crack. He stood. Every other person in the hall stood with him. Protocol. When the Alpha King stands, everyone stands. Ilara. He gestured to the chair at his right hand. Please join me. That chair had been empty for as long as I could remember. It was the Queen's chair, the chair for the Alpha King's mate. Vivian sat 3 seats down, her face pale with shock. I walked to the chair on shaking legs. Lysander pulled it out for me. His hand brushed my shoulder as I sat. That electric jolt again. Stronger every time we touched. He sat. Everyone else sat. Conversations resumed, but quieter now. Everyone was listening. Everyone was watching. A servant appeared at my elbow with coffee and a plate. I stared at the food. Eggs, bacon, fresh fruit. More food than I'd eaten in a week as a servant. My stomach growled. Eat, Lysander said quietly. You're too thin. I picked up a fork with trembling hands. The food tasted like heaven, like I was tasting it for the first time. Maybe I was. 12 years of 1 meal a day bland and barely enough had dulled my memory of real food. Ilara. Lysander's voice was formal now, loud enough for everyone to hear. I've reviewed your situation. The debt attributed to your father was investigated last night by independent auditors. The hall went silent. Even the servants stopped moving. The documentation was fraudulent. The debt never existed. Someone forged those records to justify your servitude. Gasps echoed through the hall. I set down my fork, my hands shaking too hard to hold it. Effective immediately, you are released from all obligations. Your status as a servant is revoked. You will be compensated for 12 years of forced labor at the rate of $100 per day plus interest. That sum will be transferred to an account in your name this afternoon. I did the math through my shock. 12 years, 365 days per year, $100 per day, $438,000 plus interest. Enough to live on for the rest of my life. Furthermore, Lysander continued, his eyes never leaving mine. I'm creating a new position, Royal Healer. You will oversee the Palace Healing Wing, train new healers, and provide medical care to anyone who needs it. Your salary will be $200,000 annually. You will have full access to the palace resources, including the medical library and herb gardens. The hall erupted, voices raised in shock and protest and confusion. Vivian's face had gone from pale to crimson. Chancellor Dorian Blackwood, her father, stood from his seat. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. To elevate a servant to such a position without proper vetting, without... Are you questioning my judgment, Chancellor? Lysander's voice dropped to that dangerous register, the one that made even counselors think twice. Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely suggest that perhaps a more gradual transition would be appropriate. Public perception, you understand. I understand perfectly. Lysander stood. Everyone stood with him. The matter is decided. Ilara Winterborn is under my personal protection. Anyone who has concerns may bring them directly to me. He looked down at me. Finish your breakfast. Then Margot will show you to the healing wing. We'll discuss your new responsibilities this afternoon. He walked out of the great hall, his steps measured and controlled. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, could see his hands clenched at his sides, could see the effort it took to maintain that control. The moment he left the hall exploded into conversation. I sat frozen, my breakfast forgotten, while around me the entire social order of the palace shifted and rearranged itself. Margot appeared at my elbow. Come, Miss Winterborn, I'll show you to the healing wing. Miss Winterborn. Not Ilara, not girl, Miss Winterborn. Like I was someone who mattered, like I was someone worth respecting. I followed her through corridors I'd cleaned but never really seen, through doors marked with medical symbols, into a wing of the palace that had been closed for years. The healing wing was a disaster. Dusty, disorganized, supplies expired or missing, the medical library in chaos. The herb garden outside the windows completely overgrown, but it was mine. All mine. I turned to Margot. I'll need gardeners, at least two, and someone to help catalog and organize the supplies, and access to the medical texts in the main library. Margot smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I'll arrange it immediately, Miss Winterbourne. I spent the rest of that morning exploring my new domain, opening cupboards, checking supplies, making lists of what I needed, planning how to transform this neglected wing into something worthy of the Winterbourne name, something my mother would have been proud of. By afternoon, I had my first patient, a young servant girl named Ivy. She came to the door holding her hand wrapped in bloody cloth, too scared to go to the palace physician, too scared to ask for help. Please, she whispered. It's infected. I think I'll lose it. I unwrapped the cloth carefully. The wound was deep, a cut from broken glass that had gone untreated for days. The infection had set in, red lines spreading up her arm, fever bright in her eyes. Sit, I told her gently. I can help. I cleaned the wound with antiseptic, applied healing salve. Then I placed my hands over the injury and let myself reach for the gift I'd buried for 12 years. The gift my mother had passed to me, the gift I'd been too afraid to use. Heat bloomed in my chest. Warmth traveled down my arms. My hands began to glow. Soft, green, like spring light through new leaves. The girl gasped. I felt the infection. Felt it like darkness in her blood. I pulled it out, drew it into myself and burned it away with the healing light. The wound began to close. The red lines faded. The fever broke. When I finished, Ivy's hand was pink and healthy. The wound completely healed. She stared at her hand, then at me, then burst into tears. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I held her while she cried. This girl who'd been too scared to ask for help, too used to suffering in silence, too convinced that people like us didn't deserve care. You're welcome here, I told her. Always, tell the others, anyone who needs healing can come to me. No payment, no judgment, just healing. Word spread fast in a palace. By evening, I had a line of people outside the healing wing, servants mostly, people who'd been suffering in silence for years, people who'd never had access to real medical care. I treated them all, a cook with arthritis in her hands, a gardener with a persistent cough, a stable hand with a broken finger that had healed wrong years ago and never been reset, one after another, hour after hour, until the sun set and the moon rose and my hands ached from channeling so much healing energy. But I felt alive. For the first time in 12 years, I felt like myself, like I had a purpose beyond survival, like I was my mother's daughter again. I was treating the last patient when I sensed him, felt his presence before I saw him, smelled cedar and leather and wild things. Looked up to find Lysander standing in the doorway watching. Our eyes met, held. The patient finished thanking me and slipped out, leaving us alone. Lysander stepped into the room. His suit jacket was gone. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. He looked tired, the shadows under his eyes darker than this morning. You've been busy, he said. Word spreads fast. Turns out a lot of people need healing. He moved closer, examining the organized supplies, the clean surfaces, the herb catalog I'd started. You did all this in one day. I had help. Margot assigned 2 gardeners and a supply assistant. The herb garden will take time, but I've identified 23 rare specimens that can be salvaged. 23. He turned to look at me. You know herbs. My mother taught me, before she died. Something flickered in his expression. Your mother was Dr. Lyanna Winterbourne. Yes. She saved 347 people from plague in 2015. Gave her life to do it. I swallowed hard against the sudden tightness in my throat. Yes. You have her gift. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. He moved closer. We stood in the middle of the healing room, surrounded by herbs and medical texts and the lingering scent of the salves I'd been using all day. Close enough that I could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. Close enough that his scent wrapped around me. Why did you do this? I asked. The room, the position, the compensation, why? His jaw tightened. I told you, the debt was fraudulent. That doesn't explain the rest. You could have released me and sent me on my way. You didn't have to create a position. Didn't have to put me at your right hand at breakfast. Didn't have to defend me in front of the entire court. He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He reached out, stopped himself. His hand fell back to his side. Something about you, your scent, the way my wolf reacts when you're near. I don't understand it. The blood oath, I said quietly, with Vivian Blackwood. His expression went hard. What do you know about that? I know she mentioned it last night. Through the wall, I know she expects to be queen. I know I'm threatening whatever future she's planned. You're not threatening anything. Vivian and I, it's complicated. Complicated how? He turned away, running a hand through his dark hair. We made the oath when we were 12, a childhood promise. It's binding in werewolf law. Not as strong as a mate bond, but strong enough. The pack expects us to marry. The council expects it. Her father is the chancellor. It makes political sense. Do you love her? The question hung in the air between us. Outside, I could hear the night sounds of the palace. Guards changing shifts, servants finishing evening duties. Somewhere a wolf howled at the rising moon. No, his voice was barely a whisper. I don't love her. I never have. But obligation and love are different things. I'm the Alpha King. My choices aren't my own. I moved closer, close enough to touch him if I was brave enough, close enough to see the conflict in his eyes. Everyone's choices are their own, even kings. He looked down at me. The gold was back in his eyes, his wolf pushing toward the surface. You don't know what you're asking. I'm not asking anything. I'm just saying that 12 years of servitude taught me one thing. Life is too short to live for everyone else's expectations. His hand came up, slow, careful, like he was moving against his own will. His fingers brushed my cheek. That electric jolt, stronger every time. Strong enough that I gasped. Strong enough that his pupils dilated and his breath caught. Rain and jasmine, he whispered. Every time I breathe, I smell it. Every time you're near, my wolf goes insane. What are you doing to me? I don't know. I don't understand this any more than you do. His thumb traced my cheekbone. His eyes dropped to my lips. For one heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me. For one heartbeat, I wanted him to kiss me more than I'd wanted anything in my entire life. Then he stepped back abruptly. His hand fell away. The cold rushed in where his warmth had been. I should go. It's late. You should rest. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the frame, didn't turn around. Alara, what Vivian did tonight at the gala, it won't be the last time. She sees you as a threat. Please, be careful. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the healing wing, with my racing heart and tingling skin and the phantom warmth of his touch still burning on my cheek. I stayed there for a long time, standing in the middle of my new workspace, my new life, trying to understand what was happening, trying to make sense of the Alpha King who smelled like cedar and leather and wild things, who defended servants at galas, who created positions out of nothing, who looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve, whose touch sent electricity through my veins and made my silent wolf whimper with longing. Eventually, I returned to my room in the East Wing. The green dress hung in the wardrobe like a promise, like proof that today had been real, that I wasn't still in the basement dreaming of impossible things. I lay in the four-poster bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the wall, I heard Vivian's voice again, sharp, angry. You've been avoiding me, Lysander. I've been busy. His voice tired, distant. Too busy for me. Your blood-bound mate. The woman you're going to marry. Vivian, please, not tonight. It's her, isn't it, that pathetic little healer? You're thinking about her. I'm not having this conversation. You are. I can see it in your eyes. The way you looked at her at breakfast. The way you defended her. You've never defended me like that. That's different. How is it different? Silence. Long and heavy. The blood oath binds you to me, Vivian said. Her voice had gone soft. Dangerous. Not to her, me. Don't forget that, my darling. Don't forget what we are to each other. What we've always been meant to be. I heard footsteps. A door closing. Then silence. I pressed my hands to my face. This was dangerous. Whatever was happening between Lysander and me, it was dangerous. Vivian Blackwood wasn't someone who accepted defeat gracefully. She'd proven that at the gala. She'd prove it again. But for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't afraid. For the first time in 12 years, I had something worth fighting for. A purpose, a gift, a chance to honor my mother's legacy. And maybe, just maybe, I had something else too. Something that made an Alpha King's eyes flash gold. Something that smelled like rain and jasmine and spring storms over Montana mountains. Something that felt like hope. 3 weeks passed in a blur of healing and transformation. The healing wing became my sanctuary. Every morning I woke with the sun and walked through halls that no longer felt like prison corridors. Every morning I opened the wing doors to find people waiting. Servants mostly at first. But word spread beyond the palace walls. Pack members from the outer territories, families who couldn't afford the expensive physicians in town, children with fevers, elderly wolves with joints worn from decades of shifting. I treated them all. The gardeners I'd requested turned out to be two brothers. Owen and Felix, both in their 60s, both thrilled to finally have someone who appreciated the medicinal plants they'd been tending for years. Together, we salvaged the herb garden, pulled weeds, identified specimens, planted new seedlings that would take years to mature, but would save lives once they did. The supply assistant Margot assigned was a young woman named Petra. Sharp-eyed, quick-witted, she'd been wasting away filing documents in the records office. Now she cataloged herbs and mixed tinctures and learned healing techniques with an enthusiasm that reminded me of myself before everything fell apart. The medical library slowly revealed its treasures. Ancient texts on werewolf physiology, handwritten journals from healers who'd lived centuries ago, my mother's own notes carefully preserved detailing techniques I'd never known she'd developed. I read them late into the night, absorbed every word, applied the knowledge the next day. By the end of the first week, I'd treated 73 patients. By the end of the second week, 147. By the end of the third week, word had spread so far that wolves from neighboring territories were making the journey to see the healer who worked miracles with her hands. The palace staff loved me. I learned their names, asked about their families, treated their ailments with respect and care. They brought me gifts, fresh bread from the kitchens, flowers from the gardens, a scarf one of the weavers had made, small tokens that meant more than gold. I heard the whispers as I walked through the halls. She's nothing like the usual nobility. Did you hear she saved Marcus's daughter from scarlet fever? The physicians had given up. My sister works in the records office. She says Queen-to-be Vivian has never once visited the servant quarters. But Miss Winterbourne, she sits with the sick for hours. The comparison stung Vivian like silver on skin. I could see it in the way she watched me during meals in the Great Hall, in the tight smile she gave when we passed in corridors, in the whispered conversations she had with her father, Chancellor Dorian, that stopped abruptly when I approached. But I had work to do. Purpose. For the first time since my parents died, I felt like myself again. And then there was Lysander. He appeared at the healing wing 3 times a week, always unannounced, always with some excuse, checking on palace resources, reviewing medical expenditures, ensuring the new royal healer position was functioning properly. But I knew the truth. I could feel it in the way his eyes tracked me across the room, in the way his hands clenched when another male wolf stood too close, in the way his scent wrapped around me every time he entered. Cedar and leather and that wild, unnamed thing that made my pulse spike. He never touched me again. Not after that night in the healing wing when his fingers had brushed my cheek. But the wanting was there, visible, undeniable, written in every line of his body whenever we were in the same room. I felt it too, the pull, like gravity, like magnetic north, like something ancient and primal that recognized its other half. But the blood oath stood between us. Vivian Blackwood, the woman everyone expected him to marry, the woman whose father controlled half the council, the woman who looked at me with eyes full of poison. On the 21st day, everything changed. I was in the healing wing treating an elderly woman with severe arthritis when Margot appeared in the doorway. Miss Winterbourne, there's someone here to see you, a visiting dignitary. I finished applying salve to the woman's swollen knees, my healing magic flowing through my hands in warm green waves. The woman sighed with relief as decades of pain eased. Come back in 3 days, I told her. We'll do another treatment. She left with tears of gratitude. I washed my hands and turned to Margot. A dignitary, Alpha Tobias Ashford, from the Northern Montana Territories. He's requested a meeting with you specifically. Says he's heard about your healing abilities and needs your expertise. Northern Montana. I'd heard of the territory. Wild, remote, thousands of acres of untamed forest and mountains. The wolves there were known for their independence and their fierce loyalty to their alpha. Send him in. Margot disappeared. A moment later, a man entered the healing wing, and I understood immediately why he commanded such loyalty. Tobias Ashford was 32 years old and looked like he'd been carved from the mountains themselves. 6 feet 3 inches of lean muscle, sandy hair that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled, an easy confidence that put people at ease. Where Lysander was all sharp edges and controlled power, Tobias was warmth and openness. Miss Winterbourne. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect rather than submission. Thank you for seeing me. I know you're busy. Alpha Ashford, welcome to the palace. How can I help you? His smile faded. Worry creased his forehead. My pack is dying. I gestured for him to sit at the consultation table I'd set up near the windows. He pulled out maps and documents, spreading them across the surface. Started 4 months ago. Respiratory illness, coughing, fever, difficulty breathing. We thought it was a seasonal thing at first. Mountain air gets thin in winter, but it's gotten worse. 23 dead so far. Children, elderly, even some of our strongest warriors. I studied the maps. His territory covered vast swaths of wilderness north of the palace. High elevation, dense forest, limited access to modern medicine. Have you consulted physicians? 3 of them, all stumped. The symptoms don't match anything in their textbooks. Traditional treatments don't work. I heard about you from one of my pack members who made the journey here last week. Said you cured his daughter's fever in 20 minutes when the physicians had given up. I remembered, a traveling merchant, his 8-year-old daughter burning with infection. I'd drawn the sickness from her blood with my healing gift. She'd walked out of the wing laughing. Tell me more about the symptoms, every detail. For the next 2 hours we worked together. Tobias described cases. I cross-referenced medical text. We discussed environmental factors, water sources, food supplies, seasonal patterns. The easy way he spoke surprised me. No condescension. No doubt that a woman could solve what 3 physicians couldn't. Just genuine hope and respect. Finally, I found it. A passage in one of my mother's journals. High-altitude respiratory syndrome, I read aloud, caused by a combination of thin air, cold temperatures, and a specific fungal spore that grows on pine bark above 8,000 feet. The spores are inhaled. They colonize the lungs. Traditional medicine can't touch them because they're not bacterial or viral. But there's a treatment. What treatment? Elderflower extract combined with pine needle tea. The compounds counteract the spores, force them to release their hold on lung tissue. But the elderflower has to be harvested at a specific time, early spring, when the first buds appear. Tobias leaned forward. We're in early spring now. Exactly, and I have elderflower in my garden. Owen and Felix preserved specimens from last year. If we combine them with fresh pine needles from your territory, we can create the remedy. Hope blazed in his brown eyes. You can save them. I can try. I'll need samples of the pine from your territory, the specific variety growing at your elevation, and I'll need detailed information about the affected individuals, ages, health history, severity of symptoms. I'll get you everything you need. He stood, then hesitated. Miss Winterbourne, Ilara, if you can do this, if you can save my pack, I'll owe you a debt I can never repay. You won't owe me anything. Saving lives is what I do. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. You're remarkable. No wonder the entire palace is talking about you. Heat crept into my cheeks. They're exaggerating. Are they? In 3 weeks, you've transformed a dead wing into a thriving medical center. You've treated hundreds of people. You've given hope to wolves who'd forgotten what hope felt like. That's not exaggeration. That's truth. Before I could respond, I felt it. The shift in air pressure, the prickle at the back of my neck, the overwhelming sense of presence that preceded Lysander like a storm front. He appeared in the doorway, still in his council clothes, dark suit, silver tie. But his eyes were molten gold. His hands were clenched at his sides. The air around him practically vibrated with barely contained alpha power. His gaze locked on Tobias, on how close we stood, on the maps and documents spread between us, on the easy familiarity that had developed over 2 hours of collaboration. Alpha Ashford. Lysander's voice could have frozen water. I didn't realize you were visiting the palace. Tobias turned unfazed by the hostility radiating from the Alpha King. Your Majesty, I came seeking your royal healer's expertise. I should have requested an audience with you first. My apologies. What expertise do you need? I stepped forward before the tension could escalate further. Alpha Ashford's pack is suffering from a respiratory illness. I've identified the cause, and we're developing a treatment protocol. Lysander's eyes cut to me, gold faded slightly, replaced by steel gray. Miss Winterbourne has been incredibly generous with her time and knowledge, Tobias said smoothly. I'm grateful the kingdom has such a skilled healer. Indeed, Lysander moved into the room, positioned himself between Tobias and me. The territorial display was obvious, primal. How long will you be staying, Alpha Ashford? A few days. Until the remedy is prepared and I can transport it safely to my territory. You'll be our guest in the palace, of course. Margot will arrange accommodations. Lysander's tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. It was a command that would be monitored. Thank you, Your Majesty. Your hospitality is appreciated. The two alphas stared at each other, measuring, assessing, some silent communication passing between them that I couldn't decode. Finally, Tobias bowed. If you'll excuse me, I should gather those pine samples before nightfall. Alara, I'll return tomorrow with the information you requested. Alara, he'd used my first name. Casually, easily, like we were friends. Lysander's jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. Tobias left. The healing wing suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. I busied myself organizing the maps, acutely aware of Lysander standing too close, breathing too loud, radiating fury like heat from a furnace. Alara, his voice was dangerously quiet. I looked up, met those steel-gray eyes that kept trying to bleed to gold. He uses your first name. He asked permission. I granted it. You granted it. He stepped closer. Do you grant that permission to everyone, or just visiting alphas with warm smiles and easy charm? Are you angry that he's here, or angry that I agreed to help him? I'm angry that you were laughing with him, that you stood close enough to touch, that you looked at him like... He stopped, shook his head sharply. Never mind. Like what, Lysander? The use of his first name stopped him cold. I'd never used it before. Always Your Majesty, always the proper distance. But something in this moment demanded honesty, demanded we stop pretending. Like he matters, he finished quietly. He does matter. He's an alpha whose pack is dying. I'm a healer. Helping him is literally my purpose. Your purpose, he laughed, bitter. Is that what this is, just purpose? What else would it be? He closed the remaining distance between us. We stood in the fading afternoon light, surrounded by herbs and medical texts and the heavy weight of things unsaid. His scent wrapped around me, cedar and leather and wild things. I breathed it in despite myself. You know what else it could be. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I see how you react when I enter a room, how your pulse jumps when I'm near, how your scent gets stronger, sweeter like jasmine blooming in moonlight. My breath caught. You notice my pulse? I notice everything about you. The way you tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're concentrating. The way you bite your bottom lip when you're reading something difficult. The way you hum while you mix remedies. I've counted 17 different healing techniques you use, cataloged every patient you've treated, memorized the schedule you keep. The admission hung between us, raw, honest, terrifying. Why? My voice shook. You have Vivian, the blood oath, a future planned. Why do you notice me at all? His hand came up, stopped inches from my face, trembling with the effort of not touching. Because I can't stop. Because every time I try to focus on anything else, I smell rain and jasmine. Because my wolf goes insane when other males are near you. Because I've spent 12 years ignoring what was right in front of me, and now that I see you, I can't look away. The blood oath is killing me. The words came out harsh, painful. Every day I feel it pulling me toward Vivian. Obligation, duty, political necessity. But every night I lie awake thinking about you, about your hands healing the broken, about your voice soothing the frightened, about the way you transform suffering into hope. He lowered his hand, stepped back. The cold rushed in where his warmth had been. This is wrong. You know it's wrong. I'm bound to another woman, expected to marry her, expected to make her queen. I have no right to want you, no right to notice your pulse or memorize your schedule or go insane with jealousy when Tobias Ashford looks at you like you're the answer to every question he's ever asked. Then stop. I met his eyes directly. Stop coming to the healing wing. Stop watching me. Stop torturing yourself with something you can't have. I've tried. Do you think I haven't tried? For 3 weeks, I've tried to stay away, but I find excuses. Reasons I need to check on palace resources or review expenditures or ensure the new position is functioning properly. Lies, I tell myself, so I can spend 10 minutes in the same room as you. Why are you telling me this? Because watching Tobias with you today made me realize something. The blood oath is binding. But it's not a mate bond, and whatever this is between us, He gestured at the space separating us, the air that practically crackled with tension. Whatever this is, it's stronger than any oath made by children who didn't understand what they were promising. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to know the truth. I need to understand what you are to me. Why my wolf recognizes you. Why your scent calls to something primal in my blood. Why I'd rather spend 5 minutes arguing with you than 5 hours with anyone else. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Lysander moved away from me, quickly putting proper distance between us. Margot appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, the council meeting begins in 10 minutes. Thank you, Margot. I'm coming. He looked at me one last time, gold bleeding through gray. We're not finished with this conversation. Then he was gone, and I was alone with my racing heart and shaking hands, and the phantom warmth of almost being touched. I stayed in the healing wing until well after dark, mixing the elderflower extract, preparing samples for Tobias, trying to focus on work instead of replaying every word Lysander had said. When I finally returned to my room, exhaustion dragged at my bones. I changed into a nightgown and collapsed onto the bed. Through the wall, I heard voices. Vivian and Lysander. Their rooms adjacent to mine, a constant reminder of the future everyone expected. You've been avoiding me, Vivian's voice, sharp with accusation. I've been in council meetings all day. Don't lie to me, Lysander. I know where you were. The healing wing. Again. That's the third time this week. I'm ensuring palace resources are being used appropriately. Palace resources. She laughed, bitter. Is that what you call her now? A resource to be managed, Vivian? I see how you look at her, like you're starving and she's a feast you can't have. The entire palace sees it. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I'm your blood-bound mate. Not her. Me. Silence, heavy and long. The blood oath was made when we were children, Lysander said finally. We didn't know what we were promising. We promised ourselves to each other. That's what we knew. That's what matters. And is it because I'm starting to wonder if you'd rather have that common healer, that servant girl, playing dress up in silks she doesn't deserve? Don't, the Alpha command cracked through his voice. Don't speak about her that way. Why not? It's the truth. She's nothing, less than nothing. A servant who got lucky because you felt guilty about some forged debt. She's the daughter of Thaddeus and Lyanna Winterborn, Alpha bloodline, legendary healer. She has more nobility in her smallest finger than most council members have in their entire being. You defend her. You defend her to me, your mate. You're not my mate, Vivian. You never have been. The blood oath isn't a mate bond. It never was. Glass shattered, something thrown against a wall. How dare you? How dare you say that to me? We've been bound since we were 12. 12 years of planning our future. 12 years of me standing by your side. 12 years of me being exactly what this kingdom needs in a queen. And you'd throw it all away for some healer who's been here 3 weeks. This conversation is over. It's not over. Not until you remember who you belong to. The blood oath binds you to me. Flesh and blood and magic. You can want her all you like. You can watch her. You can memorize her schedule and notice her pulse. But you're mine. Forever. I heard footsteps, a door slamming, then silence. I lay in the darkness, my heart aching for reasons I couldn't fully name. Lysander was right. The blood oath wasn't a mate bond, but it was still binding, still powerful, still something that stood between us like a wall of stone. And Vivian wasn't wrong. I had been a servant 3 weeks ago. I didn't belong in silk dresses or private wings or conversations with the Alpha King. I didn't belong in his thoughts or his late-night confessions or the gold that bled through his eyes when he looked at me. But belonging and wanting were different things. And I wanted. God's help me, I wanted. The next morning, Tobias returned to the healing wing with samples and information. We worked together for hours refining the remedy, testing concentrations, ensuring dosage accuracy. He made me laugh with stories from the northern territories. Tales of wolves who lived wild and free, of mountains that touched the sky, of a simpler life far from palace politics and the blood oaths and impossible wants. You should visit sometime, he said as we bottled the final batch of remedy. See the territories. Meet the pack you're saving. I'd like that. Would you? He looked at me directly, those warm brown eyes sincere. Because I get the feeling you're trapped here, in this beautiful palace with its beautiful manners and its ugly politics. I see it in your eyes. The longing for something different. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brilliant. I know you're kind. I know you transform suffering into hope with your bare hands. And I know the Alpha King watches you like a man dying of thirst watches water he can't reach. Heat flooded my cheeks. We're not. I know, the blood oath. I heard about it from the palace staff. They gossip worse than old women. He smiled gently. But for what it's worth, if you weren't bound here by whatever complicated situation you're in, I'd court you properly, the way you deserve. Before I could respond, Lysander appeared in the doorway. His eyes went immediately to Tobias's hand resting near mine on the table, to how close we stood, to the easy comfort that had developed over hours of collaboration. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Alpha Ashford, steel in his voice, ice in his eyes. I trust the remedy is prepared. It is, Your Majesty, thanks to Miss Winterbourne's expertise. Tobias didn't move, didn't step away from me, the subtle challenge clear. Then you'll be leaving soon. Tomorrow morning, I need to return to my pack as quickly as possible. Of course, Margot will arrange supplies for your journey. The two alphas stared at each other, something passing between them that went beyond words, a challenge, a warning, a territorial display as old as wolves themselves. Finally, Tobias turned to me. Thank you, Alara, for everything. You've saved lives today. My pack won't forget this kindness. He left. The silence he left behind was deafening. Lysander moved into the room, slow, controlled. But I could see the tension in every line of his body, the gold fighting to surface in his eyes, the barely leashed power that made the air itself feel heavy. He used your first name again. He's leaving tomorrow. Does it matter? It matters. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Everything about you matters. Lysander, do you like him? The question came out rough, almost desperate. Tobias, do you like him? He's kind, respectful. He treats me like an equal. That's not what I asked. I met his gaze directly, saw the vulnerability beneath the alpha power, the fear that I might say yes, that I might choose easy warmth over complicated fire. No, I said quietly. I don't like him, not the way you mean. Relief flooded his expression. His shoulders dropped, his hands unclenched. Why not? He's everything I'm not. Free, uncomplicated, available. Because he's not you. The admission hung between us. Raw, honest, dangerous. Lysander's eyes went pure gold, his wolf surging forward. His hand came up, cupped my face. This time he didn't stop himself. This time he touched. The electric jolt hit like lightning. I gasped. He groaned. The bond between us, whatever it was, flared to life, warm and golden and absolutely undeniable. I need to know. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I need to understand what you are to me. Why my wolf knows you. Why your scent is burned into my memory. Why touching you feels like coming home. How do we find out? Elder Cassian, he's a seer, the oldest living werewolf in North America. If anyone can tell us the truth about this bond, it's him. When, tonight, after the palace sleeps, meet me at the East Garden Gate. He dropped his hand, stepped back, but his eyes stayed locked on mine, gold and gray and full of desperate hope. Don't tell anyone. Vivian has spies everywhere. If she finds out, I won't tell anyone. He nodded once, then turned and left before his control could slip further. I stood alone in the healing wing, my face still tingling where he touched me. My heart racing, my mind spinning with possibilities and fears, and the golden warmth of whatever bond was forming between us. Tonight we would learn the truth. Tonight everything would change. I just had to survive until then. The palace settled into darkness slowly, like an ancient creature curling up to sleep. One by one the lights in the windows went out. Servants finished their evening duties and retreated to their quarters. Guards changed shifts at midnight, their footsteps echoing through stone corridors. Council members retired to their suites, their political machinations suspended until morning. I waited in my room watching the moon rise over the Montana Rockies, full and bright, a hunter's moon, my mother used to call it, the kind that made wolves restless, that called to the wild parts of our nature we tried so hard to civilize. My wolf stirred for the first time in 12 years. Just a whisper, a flutter in my chest like wings against ribs. The wolfsbane was finally leaving my system. The poison that had kept her silent, kept her locked away, was fading. Soon I would shift again. Soon I would run under moonlight with 4 legs instead of 2. The thought should have terrified me. 12 years was a long time to be severed from half your nature. But instead I felt relief. Like a missing piece was sliding back into place. At 1 in the morning, I dressed in dark clothes, simple trousers and a tunic borrowed from Petra. Nothing that would catch moonlight or make noise. I braided my hair back tight. No loose strands to give me away. The east garden gate was on the far side of the palace, away from the main buildings, away from windows and guards and watching eyes. I navigated the corridors like a shadow. 12 years as a servant had taught me every back passage, every blind spot, every route that avoided detection. The gardens at night were transformed. Silver light painted everything in shades of gray and black. Roses became dark shapes against darker stone. The fountain at the center looked like frozen mercury. Jasmine vines climbed the walls, their white flowers glowing like captured stars. Lysander stood by the gate, waiting. He'd changed too. Dark clothes that blended with shadow. His hair loose instead of tied back. He looked younger like this. Less like the Alpha King who commanded armies, and more like the man who'd touched my face with trembling hands. You came. Relief colored his voice. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought maybe you'd come to your senses, realized how dangerous this is, what we're risking. What are we risking? He looked at me for a long moment. Moonlight turned his gray eyes silver. Everything. He opened the gate. It swung silently on well-oiled hinges. Beyond lay the forest, dense, dark, wild. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks crowned with snow that never melted. Elder Cassian lives in the old tower, Lysander said. 3 miles into the forest. We'll have to run. Run, no. Shift. It's faster and safer. The forest belongs to the wolves at night. My wolf stirred again. Stronger this time. Eager. I hadn't shifted in 12 years. Hadn't felt fur and 4 legs and the pure joy of running wild. What if I couldn't? What if the wolfsbane had damaged something permanent? Lysander must have seen the fear in my expression. You can do this. Your wolf is waking. I can smell it on you. Cedar and jasmine, and underneath something new, something wild. He stepped back and shifted. The transformation was beautiful, smooth, practiced. One moment he was a man, the next a massive wolf with dark gray fur and eyes that blazed gold in the moonlight. He was huge, alpha-sized, easily 400 pounds of muscle and power and primal grace. He looked at me, waiting. I closed my eyes and reached for my wolf. Found her there closer to the surface than she'd been in years. Awake, alert, ready. The shift hurt. My bones cracked and reformed. My skin stretched. Fur erupted along my spine and limbs. I fell to all fours as my hands became paws. My spine elongated, my face restructured into a muzzle. Pain lanced through every nerve ending. I bit back a scream that came out as a howl. Then it was done. I stood on 4 legs panting, adjusting to the sensory overload. Everything was sharper. Smells exploded in complexity. I could identify individual flowers in the garden. Could smell the rabbits in their burrows 100 yards away. Could smell Lysander. Cedar and leather magnified 1,000 times, calling to something deep in my blood. I looked down at myself. My fur was lighter than I expected. Not white, but pale silver gray. My paws were smaller than Lysander's, but strong. Built for endurance rather than raw power. Lysander moved closer, pressed his muzzle against mine. A gesture of affection, of approval, of recognition. The bond between us flared. Golden warmth that had nothing to do with moonlight. Then he turned and ran. I followed. Running as a wolf was like remembering how to fly. The forest blurred past. Trees became dark streaks. The ground disappeared beneath my paws. My muscles burned with effort and joy. This was what I'd lost. This freedom, this wildness, this connection to the earth and sky, and everything between. Lysander ran ahead, his darker fur barely visible in the shadows, but I could track him by scent, by the golden thread of bond that connected us now. By the way, my wolf knew exactly where he was at every moment. We ran for 20 minutes, deep into old-growth forest where human feet rarely tread, past streams that reflected moonlight like liquid silver, through clearings carpeted in moss, around massive pines that had stood for centuries. Finally, we reached the tower. It rose from the forest floor like something from a fairy tale. Stone walls covered in ivy, narrow windows that glowed with warm candlelight, a door carved with symbols I recognized from my mother's journals, protection wards, blessing sigils, marks of power that predated modern werewolf culture. Lysander shifted back to human form. I followed the transformation easier this time, less painful, my body remembering how it was supposed to work. We stood in the moonlight, breathing hard, dressed again in the clothes we'd carried in our mouths during the run. Lysander's hand found mine, squeezed once. Ready? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He knocked. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the silent forest. The door opened immediately, as if we'd been expected. Elder Cassian Ravencroft stood in the doorway, 75 years old but straight-backed and sharp-eyed. His hair was pure white, hanging to his shoulders. His face was lined with age and wisdom and the weight of secrets kept for decades. But his eyes were bright, amber gold, a seer's eyes that saw past, present, and future all at once. Lysander Greystone. His voice was like old whiskey, smooth and rough at the same time. I wondered how long it would take you to come. Elder Cassian. Lysander bowed his head, a gesture of respect he showed to no one else. We need your guidance. Come in, both of you. We have much to discuss. The tower interior was exactly what I expected. Books stacked floor to ceiling, herbs hanging from rafters to dry. Candles burning everywhere, their light dancing across stone walls. A fire crackling in a massive hearth, the smell of sage and cedar and old magic. Elder Cassian gestured to chairs near the fire. We sat. He poured tea into 3 cups without asking if we wanted it. The liquid was dark, fragrant, something herbal and bitter and ancient. Drink, he commanded. It will help you see clearly what we discussed tonight. I drank. The tea burned going down. Heat spread through my chest and limbs. My vision sharpened. The candlelight seemed brighter. I could see patterns in the smoke rising from the fire. Shapes and symbols that meant something just beyond my understanding. Elder Cassian sat across from us. His amber eyes studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. Alara Winterborn, daughter of Lyanna. You have your mother's gift. I can see it glowing beneath your skin. Green light, healing magic stronger than any I've witnessed in 50 years. You knew my mother. I trained her, taught her to channel the gift, showed her techniques that had been lost for generations. She was my finest student. His expression grew sad. I mourned her loss deeply. The world became darker the day Lyanna Winterborn died. Tears pricked my eyes. She saved 347 people. She saved more than that. Her research, her journals, her innovations in healing technique. They'll save thousands more in years to come. You carry that legacy now. I'm trying, but I can't. You are exactly what she was at your age. Brilliant, compassionate, powerful. Don't diminish yourself, child. You've achieved in 3 weeks what most healers can't accomplish in lifetimes. Lysander leaned forward. Elder Cassian, we came because we need answers. About the bond between us. About why my wolf recognizes her. About what this means. The old seer turned his amber gaze to Lysander. You already know what it means. You've known since the moment you caught her scent at the gala. Your wolf has been screaming the truth at you for 3 weeks. You just haven't wanted to hear it. The blood oath with Vivian is a lie. Elder Cassian's voice cracked like a whip. A manipulation. A chains forged by a man who wanted power and saw a vulnerable child as his path to it. Silence fell like a stone into deep water. What are you saying? Lysander's voice was barely a whisper. I'm saying Chancellor Dorian Blackwood is a snake who used his daughter as bait. I'm saying the blood oath you made at 12 years old was performed under coercion and false pretenses. I'm saying it's not binding because true consent was never given. Lysander stood abruptly, paced to the window, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Tell me everything, from the beginning. Elder Cassian sipped his tea, watched Lysander with those knowing amber eyes. You were 12 years old, training with the palace guards. You fell during a sparring match, cut your arm badly on a broken sword. Do you remember? Yes. Lysander's voice was tight. Vivian was there. She helped bind the wound. Her father, Chancellor Dorian, he said a blood oath would strengthen the bond between our families, would ensure alliance. And you, a 12-year-old boy bleeding and in pain and surrounded by authority figures, agreed. Because children trust the adults around them. Because you had no reason to believe Chancellor Dorian had ulterior motives. What motives? Power, control, a direct line to the throne through his daughter. Dorian Blackwood has been maneuvering for position since your father's time. He saw an opportunity in a wounded child and he took it. I watched Lysander's reflection in the dark window, saw his jaw clench, saw the fury building beneath his carefully maintained control. The blood oath, Elder Cassian continued, requires true consent, understanding of what's being promised, A 12-year-old cannot give that consent, especially not when injured and influenced by trusted adults. The oath was invalid from the moment it was made. Then why does it feel real? Lysander turned from the window. Why can I feel the pull toward Vivian? Why does breaking away from her feel like ripping out part of my soul? Because Dorian is clever. He layered the false oath with compulsion magic. Small amounts, just enough to make you believe it's real, just enough to make separation painful. But it's not a true bond. It never was. My mind spun. Can compulsion magic do that, create a fake bond? It can create the illusion of one, the discomfort when separated, the sense of obligation. But it can't create actual connection. It can't make Lysander love Vivian. It can't forge the deep recognition that true mates share. Elder Cassian stood, moved to a shelf lined with ancient books, pulled one down and opened it to a marked page. This is what a real mate bond looks like. He showed us illustrations, diagrams of energy patterns, text in old languages describing the phenomenon of fated mates, two souls chosen by the moon goddess herself, a connection that transcended logic and politics and carefully laid plans. The signs are unmistakable. Elder Cassian read, instant recognition of scent, physical reaction to proximity, eyes shifting to gold without conscious control, dreams of the mate before meeting them, an electric sensation upon touch, the bond growing stronger with each interaction rather than fading. Every symptom described was something I'd experienced with Lysander. Every single one. Fated mates are rare, the elder continued, perhaps 1 in 10,000 wolves. Most settle for chosen mates. Good matches based on compatibility and politics and practical considerations. But fated mates, they're touched by the divine, chosen by forces older than civilization. He turned to look at us. Lysander Greystone and Alara Winterborn. You are fated mates, chosen by the moon goddess herself. The bond between you is real, ancient, unbreakable. The words hung in the air, truth so fundamental it changed the shape of reality. Lysander sank back into his chair. How is this possible? She's been in the palace 12 years. Why didn't I recognize her sooner? The wolfsbane, I whispered. They were poisoning me with wolfsbane, 3 drops per meal for 12 years. Elder Cassian's expression darkened. Wolfsbane suppresses the wolf nature, makes scent weaker, makes recognition harder. If you were being systematically poisoned, your mate's signature would have been nearly invisible. Who would do that? But even as I asked, I knew. Vivian. And her father, Elder Cassian confirmed. Think about it, child. Your parents died when you were 14. Killed in a rogue attack that was far too convenient. A debt appeared that made no sense. You were reduced to servitude and immediately started being poisoned. Why? The pieces fell into place. Cold. Terrible. Obvious now that someone had laid them out. Because they knew. My voice shook. Dorian knew I was Lysander's fated mate. He had to get rid of me before the bond could form. But how could he know? Lysander demanded. Fated mate bonds don't manifest until both parties are of age. Alara was 14 when she came to the palace. I was 18. The bond shouldn't have been recognizable yet. Seers can identify potential fated mates before the bond manifests, Elder Cassian said quietly. Dorian has a seer in his employ, a corrupt one who sells his visions to the highest bidder. He must have seen that you and Alara were destined for each other. So he acted, killed her parents, forged the debt, reduced her to a position where you'd never notice her, and poisoned her to ensure her mate's signature stayed hidden. Rage flooded through me, pure and white-hot. He murdered my parents to keep me from Lysander, and he performed a false blood oath to bind Lysander to his daughter. 2 prongs of the same plan: eliminate the true mate, substitute a false one, control the throne through Vivian. Lysander stood again, his hands were shaking, eyes blazing pure gold. His wolf was fighting for dominance, wanting to hunt to kill, to tear apart everyone responsible for this betrayal. I'll destroy him. The words came out more growl than speech. I'll tear down everything he's built, everything he's touched, everyone who helped him. You will, Elder Cassian agreed calmly, but not tonight. Tonight you need to understand what you're facing. Dorian Blackwood is not just a corrupt chancellor. He's a man who orchestrated murder and treason to secure power. He won't give up easily. And Vivian knows. I stood too. The tea was still burning through my veins, sharpening everything. She knows I'm the true mate. That's why she hates me. That's why she pushed me at the gala. That's why she watches me like I'm a threat. She's known from the beginning, Elder Cassian confirmed. Her father told her everything, trained her to play the role of devoted mate, taught her to use the false bond to manipulate Lysander. She's as complicit in this as Dorian. Lysander looked at me. His eyes were still gold, but the rage was giving way to something else. Something that looked like wonder. You're my mate, my true mate, chosen by the moon goddess. Yes. Everything I've felt for the past 3 weeks, the obsession, the jealousy, the constant need to be near you, that's the bond trying to complete. Yes. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides, took my face in both hands. The electric jolt was stronger than ever. Golden light erupted between us. Visible, undeniable. The bond flaring to life now that we knew the truth. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. If I'd known, if I'd paid attention, if I'd questioned the blood oath or the debt or any of it. You couldn't have known. They made sure of that. Your parents died because of me, because you were meant to be mine. My parents died because Dorian Blackwood is a monster. That's not on you. Elder Cassian cleared his throat. As touching as this is, we have practical matters to address. The bond is trying to complete. You can both feel it, but completion requires the claiming ritual. Claiming ritual, I asked. A ceremony as old as our kind. The mates formally accept each other before witnesses, exchange vows, consummate the bond. Once complete, the mate bond becomes unbreakable. Visible to every wolf, undeniable. Then we do it, Lysander said immediately. Tonight, now, whatever it takes. Not tonight, Elder Cassian shook his head. The ritual requires preparation, sacred space, witnesses who can verify the bond's authenticity, and most importantly, it requires the false bond with Vivian to be formally broken first. How do we break it? A blood oath, even a false one, can only be broken 2 ways. Death of one party, or a stronger bond overriding it. The fated mate bond is strong enough, but only after the claiming ritual completes. Lysander paced again, his mind clearly working through the logistics, the political implications, the danger. Dorian will fight this. The moment he realizes we know the truth, he'll act. He's had 12 years to build power, to place allies in key positions. He controls half the council. Then you need to move faster than he can react, Elder Cassian said. Gather evidence, expose the conspiracy, force the council to remove him before he can mount a defense. What evidence? The debt documents were destroyed after I had them investigated. The assassination of Alara's parents was ruled rogue attack. The wolfsbane poisoning, we have no proof of that either. You have me, I said quietly. Draw my blood, test it. 12 years of wolfsbane leaves traces. A competent healer can identify the specific compound and concentration. That proves systematic poisoning. And I can testify, Elder Cassian added, about the false blood oath, about Dorian's seer, about what true fated mate bonds look like versus manufactured ones. My word carries weight. Even the council will listen. It won't be enough, Lysander said. Dorian is too entrenched, too connected. We need something bigger, something that proves beyond doubt that he's a traitor. Silence fell as we all thought. The fire crackled, candles flickered. Outside I could hear the forest, owls hunting, small creatures rustling through underbrush, the eternal cycle of predator and prey. Then it hit me. The seer, Dorian's corrupt seer, if we can get him to testify, to admit he identified us as fated mates, to confirm Dorian paid him to hide that knowledge and arrange my parents' deaths. Seers can't be compelled to testify against their employers, Elder Cassian said. It's forbidden by ancient law. But they can volunteer information if their employer has committed crimes against the moon goddess herself, I countered. Interfering with fated mate bonds is one of the highest violations in our culture. If we can convince the seer that staying silent makes him complicit in that violation, he might turn on Dorian to save himself, Lysander finished. His eyes met mine, gold and bright and full of fierce pride. You're brilliant. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Elder Cassian moved to his desk, began writing something in flowing script. The seer's name is Marcus Thornfield. He lives in a cabin 20 miles north of here. I'll write you a letter of introduction. Tell him I sent you. Tell him the truth about what Dorian has done. Appeal to his conscience if he has one. If not, appeal to his survival instinct. He folded the letter and sealed it with wax, pressed his signet ring into the wax, handed it to Lysander. Be careful. Thornfield is paranoid and dangerous. He's sold his gift to the highest bidder for 30 years. He won't want his crimes exposed. We'll be careful, Lysander promised. We left the tower as the moon began its descent toward the western horizon. Dawn was still hours away, but approaching. We needed to return to the palace before the servants woke. Before anyone noticed we were gone, we shifted again and ran. But this time Lysander stayed close to my side. Our wolves ran in perfect synchronization, my smaller silver form beside his massive gray one, the bond between us singing with joy at the proximity, at the freedom, at finally understanding what we were to each other. We stopped at a stream to drink, our muzzles dipped into cold mountain water. When I lifted my head, Lysander was watching me, his gold eyes bright in the darkness. He shifted back to human. I followed. We stood in the moonlight, breathing hard, the sound of rushing water filling the silence between us. I need to tell you something, Lysander said. Before we go back, before the politics and the fighting and the danger, I need you to know. Know what? He stepped closer, took my hands. The bond flared golden between us. I love you, not because of the mate bond, not because the moon goddess chose you for me, but because you're brave and brilliant and kind, because you transform suffering into hope, because watching you heal the broken makes me believe in goodness again, because you're everything I didn't know I needed. Tears slipped down my cheeks. Lysander, I know it's fast. I know we've only really known each other 3 weeks, but I've been watching you for longer than that, noticing you without understanding why, drawn to you without knowing the reason. And now that I know the truth, now that I understand what you are to me, I won't pretend anymore. I love you too. The words came easily, true, undeniable. I've loved you since you defended me at the gala, since you held my hand and told me I smelled like rain and jasmine, since you looked at me like I mattered. He kissed me, finally, after 3 weeks of wanting and denying and fighting the pull between us. His lips were warm and soft and tasted like mountain water and moonlight. The bond exploded between us. Golden light so bright I could see it through my closed eyelids. Every nerve ending in my body came alive. This was right. This was home. This was what the moon goddess had intended all along. We broke apart, breathing hard. Lysander rested his forehead against mine. We're going to survive this. We're going to expose Dorian, break the false bond, complete the claiming ritual. And then I'm going to make you my queen in front of the entire kingdom. That's a lot of steps. We'll take them one at a time. Together. Together, I agreed. We shifted and ran the rest of the way back to the palace. The sky was just starting to lighten when we slipped through the east garden gate. We shifted back, dressed quickly. Lysander pulled me into the shadows behind the fountain. One more kiss, quick and desperate and full of promise. Be careful today, he whispered against my lips. Vivian is dangerous. If she suspects we know the truth, I'll be careful. You too. Dorian won't hesitate to act if he feels threatened. We'll visit Marcus Thornfield tomorrow night, get his testimony. Then we move against Dorian. Tomorrow night, I agreed. He kissed me once more, then disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness, heading toward the royal wing. I made my way back to my room in the east wing. My body was exhausted, but my mind raced. Everything had changed tonight. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my parents' deaths, my 12 years of servitude. All of it part of a conspiracy orchestrated by a man who wanted power more than he valued lives. But I had something now that I hadn't had before. Truth, understanding, and a mate bond that burned gold and bright and absolutely unbreakable. I collapsed onto my bed still dressed, closed my eyes, and dreamed of white wolves and golden light and a future where the monsters finally faced justice. I didn't know that in another wing of the palace, Vivian Blackwood stood at her window, watching, waiting. She'd seen us return, seen the golden light that surrounded us, seen the way we'd kissed in the shadows. And she was already planning how to destroy everything before we could expose her father, before we could complete the bond. Before we could take away the throne she'd been promised since she was 12 years old. The war was coming, and blood would be spilled before it ended. The next morning I woke with purpose burning in my chest. We had a plan. Tonight we'd visit Marcus Thornfield, get his testimony, expose Dorian's conspiracy, break the false bond. But first I had patience waiting. The healing wing filled quickly, a mother with her feverish child, an elderly gardener with failing eyesight, a young warrior with a training injury. I treated them all. My hands glowing green, my mother's gift flowing through me, stronger than ever now that the wolfsbane had left my system. Around noon, Vivian appeared in the doorway. I looked up from bandaging a servant's sprained ankle. Our eyes met across the room. Hers were cold, calculating, different from the usual hatred. This was something else, something that made my wolf stir uneasily. Miss Winterbourne, her voice was silk over steel. Might we speak privately? The servant I'd been treating gathered her things quickly and fled. Smart girl. Vivian closed the door behind her, moved to the window overlooking the herb garden. She wore deep purple today. Regal, queen-like, a statement. I've been unfair to you, she said, still facing the window. Cruel even. I came to apologize. Every instinct screamed warning. That's unexpected. Is it? She turned, smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. We're both trapped in this situation. You didn't ask to be elevated. I didn't ask for complications. Perhaps we could find common ground. What kind of common ground? A truce, you continue your healing work. I continue preparing to be queen. We stay out of each other's way. Lysander can figure out what he wants without us tearing each other apart. It sounded reasonable, almost, but the smile never wavered. Too perfect, too practiced. I brought a peace offering. She produced an ornate tin from her bag. Tea from the Eastern Territories. Rare, expensive. I thought we could share a cup. Talk like civilized women instead of rivals. She moved to my small preparation table, pulled out 2 cups, began preparing the tea with practiced movements. Steam rose. Fragrant. Floral. Beautiful. My wolf growled. Low, insistent. Something wrong. I appreciate the gesture, I said carefully, but I'm expected at please. Vivian's voice cracked slightly. Vulnerability bleeding through the polished exterior. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Let me prove I can be better than the monster you think I am. She poured tea into both cups, took one for herself, sipped, waited. I looked at the remaining cup, the steam curling upward, the amber liquid that caught the afternoon light like liquid gold. This was a test, a trap, or maybe genuine olive branch from a woman who saw her future crumbling. My hand reached for the cup. I didn't drink the tea. My wolf wouldn't let me. She rose inside me, snarling, clawing, screaming danger with every fiber of her being. After 12 years of silence, I'd learned to listen when she spoke. Actually, I set the cup down untouched. I just remembered. I'm allergic to Eastern Territory blends. The jasmine variety they use breaks me out in hives. Vivian's smile froze, just for a heartbeat, then returned wider. How unfortunate. Another time, perhaps. She left. The tea sat on my table. Innocent. Deadly. I waited until her footsteps faded. Then I sealed the cup carefully, labeled it, and sent it with Petra to Elder Cassian with a single note. Test this. I think it's poison. The reply came 3 hours later. One word underlined 3 times, Shadowbane. The same poison that had nearly killed Lysander months ago. Enough in that single cup to stop my heart within hours. Vivian had just tried to murder me. I found Lysander in the council chambers, dismissed everyone, and locked the door. Showed him the evidence. Watched fury transform his face into something primal and dangerous. She dies for this. His voice was barely human. Tonight, I'll rip her throat out myself. No, I took his hands, felt them shaking with rage. We do this right. We expose everything. Dorian, the false oath, my parents' murder, the attempted poisoning. All of it, in front of the entire council. Legal, public, permanent. Alara, trust me, please. He pulled me close, buried his face in my hair, breathed deep. When he spoke again, his voice was steadier. You're right. We end this properly. That night, we didn't visit Marcus Thornfield. We didn't need to. The poisoned tea was evidence enough of Vivian's desperation, of guilt, of conspiracy. Instead, Lysander called an emergency council session for dawn. Mandatory attendance. His father's throne room. Every council member. Every alpha from surrounding territories. Witnesses who couldn't be bought or intimidated. I spent the night in the healing wing preparing. Drew my own blood. Tested it under microscope. The wolfsbane traces were undeniable. 12 years of systematic poisoning documented in my veins. At sunrise, I walked into the throne room wearing my mother's colors. Deep green and silver, the winterborn crest embroidered over my heart. I was done hiding, done being small. The room fell silent when I entered. 300 wolves, council members, territorial alphas, palace staff, all watching as I took my place beside Lysander's throne. Not behind, beside. Vivian sat in the front row, her father beside her, both perfectly composed. But I saw the tension in Dorian's jaw, the fear in Vivian's eyes. They knew something had shifted. Lysander stood, Alpha King in every line of his body. We're here to address treason. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, denials. Silence, working. The command cracked like thunder. Everyone obeyed. For the next hour, we laid it bare. Elder Cassian testified about the false blood oath, explained compulsion magic, described true fated mate bonds versus manufactured ones. His credentials were unimpeachable. His word law. I presented my blood tests. 12 years of wolfsbane. Someone had been poisoning me since I was 14. Since the day I'd arrived at the palace as an orphan servant. The palace physician confirmed my findings, showed the council what 12 years of toxin did to a body, how it suppressed wolf nature, how it would hide a mate bond signature. Then we presented the tea, the sealed cup, Elder Cassian's analysis, shadowbane poison, enough to kill within hours. Who gave you this tea? Lysander's voice was ice. I met Vivian's eyes across the room. Vivian Blackwood, yesterday afternoon. She called it a peace offering. Vivian shot to her feet. Lies. She's trying to frame me because she wants what? Lysander's eyes blazed gold. What exactly does Alara want, Vivian? The position you've been poisoning her to prevent her from claiming the mate bond your father tried to destroy with a false blood oath? The life your family stole when they murdered her parents? The room went dead silent. Dorian stood slowly. Your Majesty, these are serious accusations, but they're based on circumstantial evidence. A blood test that proves nothing except the girl was given wolfsbane. Tea that could have been tampered with after it left my daughter's hands. The ravings of an old seer who, I have a witness. Tobias Ashford stepped forward from the crowd. I saw Vivian Blackwood purchasing shadowbane powder 3 weeks ago in Seattle from a black market dealer. I didn't know what she planned to use it for until now, but I can testify to the transaction. I can identify the dealer. And I kept the transaction receipt I found after she dropped it. He placed a crumpled paper on the council table. Dated, signed, proof. Vivian's face went white. Dorian moved for the door. 2 guards blocked him. Lysander had planned for this. Dorian Blackwood, Lysander's voice rang through the chamber. You are charged with conspiracy to commit murder, forging financial documents, performing an invalid blood oath on a minor. 12 years of systematic poisoning of a member of this pack, and the assassination of Alpha Thaddeus Winterborn and Dr. Lyanna Winterborn. How do you plead? Dorian's composure finally cracked. You can't prove the murders. The rogue attack was orchestrated by you. Elder Cassian stepped forward. I have Marcus Thornfield's written confession, given freely last night when he learned the moon goddess herself had chosen Alara and Lysander as fated mates. Interfering with a divine bond is the highest crime in our culture. Marcus chose redemption over loyalty to you. He placed the confession on the table. Pages of testimony, dates, details, everything. Dorian lunged for it. Guards caught him, forced him to his knees. The council voted unanimously. Guilty on all charges. Vivian's vote came separate. Attempted murder. Conspiracy. Guilty. Lysander stood, looked down at the 2 people who'd stolen 12 years of our lives. Dorian Blackwood. You are stripped of all rank and title. You will spend the remainder of your life in the northern prison. No parole, no appeal. He turned to Vivian. You are exiled, effective immediately. You will be escorted to the Arctic territories. You are forbidden from returning to this kingdom for the rest of your natural life. If you attempt to return, the sentence is death. Vivian's eyes met mine. Hatred burned there, pure and undiluted. This isn't over. It is. I stood beside Lysander, felt the mate bond pulse gold between us. You lost the moment you tried to interfere with what the moon goddess decreed. Guards dragged them both away. Their screams echoed through the throne room. Then silence. Lysander turned to me. In front of 300 witnesses, he dropped to one knee. Alara Winterborn, my fated mate, chosen by the moon goddess. Will you complete the bond with me? Will you become my queen? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the 12 years that were stolen from us? Tears streamed down my face. Yes, to all of it. Yes. He stood, pulled me into his arms, kissed me as golden light exploded through the room, the mate bond completing at last. Visible, undeniable, divine. 300 wolves dropped to their knees. Queen Alara, long live the queen. 6 months later. I stood in the healing wing treating a young girl with a fever. My hands glowed green. The child's temperature dropped. Her mother wept with gratitude. "You're all set, sweetheart." I helped her down from the examination table. "Come back if the fever returns." They left. I was organizing supplies when I felt him. Lysander, my mate, my husband, my king. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "How's my queen?" "Busy. 3 more patients waiting, and the medical academy opens next week." "I still need to—" "You need to rest." His hand slid to my stomach. Rested there. Protective. Reverent. "Both of you need rest." I covered his hand with mine. Felt the life growing inside me. 6 weeks along, our child. The future we'd fought so hard to claim. "The physician confirmed it this morning," I whispered. "Twins." Lysander went absolutely still. Then he laughed. Pure joy. He turned me in his arms, dropped to his knees, pressed his face to my stomach. "Two," he whispered to my belly. "2 chances to do everything right. To give you the childhood your mother never got. To show you what love looks like when it's real." He looked up at me, gold eyes bright with tears. "I love you. More than I have words to express." "I love you too, even though you rejected me on our wedding night." He laughed, stood, pulled me close. "You'll never let me forget that, will you?" "Never, but you have 50 years to make it up to me." 50 years. He kissed me, soft, deep, complete. "That's not nearly enough, but it's a start." Outside the windows, Montana stretched forever. Mountains and forests and wild spaces where wolves ran free. The kingdom we'd saved. The future we'd built from ash and blood and 12 years of stolen time. And in my healing wings, surrounded by herbs and hope and the lingering scent of jasmine, I finally understood what my mother had known all along. Some things are worth dying for. But the best thing, the truest things, those are worth living for.